Most people imagine life's important journeys begin with grand plans. Personally, I have noticed they usually begin with a single step onto an unfamiliar platform. That was how Mr. Elias Songwood first arrived in Crimsbury. He carried one suitcase, a violin, and, though he did not yet realize it, rather more worries than any sensible person ought to pack. Mr. Songwood had recently accepted the position of musician at Crimsbury's Lantern Chapel. To the rest of us, he was simply the pleasant young musician who now lived in the little cottage by the chapel. No one asked many questions. Crimsbury has always believed that if a person wishes to tell their story, they will do so when they are ready, and if they are not, there is usually tea. It had been about a week since Mr. Songwood first stepped off the train when the front door of the Fog and Finch swung open and Mr. Albert Pemberlys strode inside with his usual booming cheerfulness, removing his top hat with one hand while greeting everyone in sight with the other. "Good afternoon, everyone." Mr. Pemberley had the remarkable habit of entering every room as though it were already filled with his dearest friends, which in his mind, it usually was. He also possessed two admirable qualities. He loved his wife completely, and he believed almost every occasion deserved celebrating. Fortunately, those two qualities got along splendidly. With his customary flourish, he produced a neat stack of cream-colored envelopes tied with a ribbon. "My dear ladies," he announced with unmistakable pride, "Emily requests the pleasure of your company this Thursday for what promises to be a most memorable afternoon of music." Doris accepted her invitation with a warm smile. "How lovely!" Mildred accepted hers just as graciously. "That sounds delightful." Mr. Pemberley beamed as though he had just solved a problem of national importance. "My Emily has been practicing for weeks. I've also engaged a splendid young accompanist, a remarkable fellow by the name of Mr. Elias Songwood." I noticed Doris smile. "Oh, our new church musician." Mr. Pemberley replied, "The very same. Such a gifted young man." Soon, Mr. Songwood had become a familiar sight in Crimsbury. Most mornings he could be seen crossing the village carrying a leather music case. He always smiled, tipped his hat, and somehow always looked just a little lost in thought. Personally, I suspected music kept him company even when no one else could hear it. Before long, Mrs. Emily Pemberley enlisted his help in preparing for her recital. The Pemberleys' grand parlour boasted a beautiful piano and enough chairs for what Mrs. Pemberley confidently called a modest gathering. In my experience, whenever humans describe something as modest, it rarely remains so. Mrs. Pemberley took her place beside the piano. "Shall we begin again, Mr. Songwood?" Elias replied with an encouraging smile. "Whenever you're ready," Mrs. Pemberley sang with remarkable enthusiasm and somewhat less remarkable accuracy. Every so often she would stop. "Oh dear, I wandered again, didn't I?" "A little," Elias said gently. "Let's try that phrase once more." Personally, I admired Mr. Songwood. It takes a special sort of kindness to correct someone without making them feel corrected. Just then, Mr. Albert Pemberley appeared carrying a tray with tea and biscuits. "My dear," he declared cheerfully, "that was absolutely splendid." Mrs. Pemberley beamed. "Albert, Do you truly think so?" "My love," he replied, placing an affectionate arm around her shoulders, "I wouldn't have missed a single note." Mr. Pemberley quietly set down the tea tray, and, believing no one was watching, slipped 2 tiny balls of cotton into his waistcoat pocket. I also noticed Mr. Songwood politely pretending not to. Good manners often consist of overlooking what another person hopes will remain unnoticed. As recital day approached, invitations found their way all over Crimsbury. Everyone accepted with genuine pleasure, though a few accepted with slightly more courage than others. Mrs. Bramble smiled bravely. Miss Hazelwick adjusted her spectacles. Mildred asked Doris in a very careful voice, "Do you suppose Mrs. Pemberley knows?" Doris looked up from arranging scones. "Knows what?" Mildred hesitated and said, "That her singing isn't exactly." She paused again, looking for a charitable word. Doris smiled kindly. "I think Emily knows exactly what matters." Mildred looked puzzled and asked, "The notes?" Doris smiled warmly. "The people." Personally, I wasn't entirely certain that answer satisfied Mildred, but I had a feeling recital day was going to answer rather more questions than any of us expected. The afternoon of the recital arrived bright and pleasantly cool. Before long, the Pemberlys' parlour was filled with familiar faces, cheerful conversation, and an impressive assortment of hats. Mrs. Pemberley greeted each guest as though welcoming royalty. Mr. Pemberley greeted everyone exactly the same way, only louder. Personally, I have always believed a warm welcome improves nearly every gathering. I selected a comfortable chair by the window. It offered an excellent view of both the piano and the refreshments. One never knows which will prove more interesting. I once overheard someone compare Mrs. Pemberley's singing to 2 cats quarreling behind a garden wall. Personally, I found the comparison rather unfair. Most cats have considerably better tone control. At precisely 2 o'clock, Mrs. Pemberley took her place beside the grand piano. Elias adjusted the music, offered an encouraging nod, and the recital began. Mrs. Pemberley sang with complete confidence. Occasionally, she and the melody wandered in slightly different directions. Fortunately, Mr. Songwood always managed to reunite them before the end of each verse. Then, just as Mrs. Pemberley reached one particularly enthusiastic high note, honk, a goose's head suddenly appeared through the open window, directly beside my chair. Personally, I hadn't invited him. Another triumphant honk. Mr. Pemberley laughed. "I believe Thaddeus is singing the harmony." Laughter rippled through the room as poor Mr. Higgins hurried past the window shouting, "Thaddeus, come back here." Thaddeus remained entirely unconcerned, and Mrs. Pemberley sang on with even greater enthusiasm. After several selections, Mrs. Pemberley smiled brightly. "And now, my final piece." I noticed more than one guest sit a little straighter, not because they were relieved, although 1 or 2 may have been, but because something had changed. Mrs. Pemberley no longer seemed eager to impress anyone. She simply looked happy. The room grew wonderfully still. The notes were no more accurate than before, but somehow, they mattered less. No one was listening to a performance anymore. They were watching a lady share something she dearly loved, and Mr. Songwood never once tried to make her into someone she wasn't. He simply helped her become the very best version of herself. I have often wondered if that is one of the finest gifts we can offer another person. The final notes faded gently into the room. For just a heartbeat, there was silence. Then Mr. Albert Pemberley sprang to his feet. "Bravo!" He applauded so enthusiastically that everyone else quickly joined him. Mrs. Pemberley blushed. "My dear," he said, offering her his arm with unmistakable pride, "that was a proper triumph. Personally, I have always believed that being someone's greatest admirer is a rather splendid occupation." Soon the piano was closed, teacups were filled, and every available plate held cake. Humans seem remarkably gifted at recovering from emotional experiences with baked goods. As the guests mingled, Mildred asked Silas what he had thought of the recital. "It was wonderful," he said simply. "Did you especially enjoy the singing?" she asked. Silas smiled. "I couldn't tell you much about the singing. I spent most of the afternoon watching Mr. Pemberley. The way he looked at his wife." Silas smiled to himself. That was worth coming to see. Personally, I thought that might have been the loveliest review of the afternoon. A little later, Mrs. Pemberley found Mr. Songwood standing quietly by the window. "Mr. Songwood, may I ask you something?" "Of course." She looked down at her teacup. "Do you think I sang well?" For a moment, Elias said nothing. Then he smiled. "I think everyone in this room could see how very much you love music." Mrs. Pemberley's eyes softened. "I do, I truly do." "I know," he replied, "and I believe they knew it too." A few moments later, Mr. Pemberley quietly approached Elias and offered his hand. "Thank you." Only 2 words. But sometimes, 2 words are entirely sufficient. As the afternoon drew to a close, guests began collecting gloves, hats, and walking sticks. Outside, the autumn air had turned pleasantly crisp. As Doris and Mildred walked home, Mildred looked unusually thoughtful and said, "I expected to spend the afternoon politely pretending." Doris nodded and said, "So did I." Mildred searched for the right words. "But I think everyone really was happy." Doris smiled. "I think Emily gave us permission to enjoy ourselves." Personally, I suspected Mr. Songwood had something to do with that as well. Some musicians fill a room with music. Others quietly fill it with courage. Mr. Songwood seemed to possess a little of both. I also suspected there was a story hidden somewhere between the notes. That evening, Mr. Songwood returned to his little cottage exactly as he had returned every evening since arriving in Crimsbury. He lit his lamp and opened his music. Once again, he never played a single note. It seems that there are some melodies that are never heard, because someone, somewhere, once convinced us they were not worth hearing.